Hey everybody, welcome to NoDQ&A Video, the official Q&A video series of NoDQ.com, right here on YouTube.com/NoDQCW, and as always, NoDQ.com. We have TNA Lockdown this weekend. You can check out the coverage at NoDQ.com. You can submit questions for NoDQ&A Video at formspring.me/Aaron Rift. With that being said, let's get right down to your questions. First one today comes from Nikki Sturzu. Now that Paul Bearer passed away, RIP, do you see WWE inducting him into the Hall of Fame this year? Please answer on video. Thanks. I think a lot of people want to see Paul Bearer go into the Hall of Fame this year. In a poll on NoDQ.com, 84% voted yes to have him inducted this year. I've seen a lot of different opinions about this. Some people feel that you shouldn't induct him just because he died. You should wait a year or two and induct him down the line when the focus can be more on his career and not the fact that he passed away. My thoughts are this. I think that it might be better to hold off on him until next year or whenever The Undertaker is going to retire. I always thought it would be perfect to induct Undertaker and Paul Bearer together into the Hall of Fame, or have Paul Bearer do the induction for Undertaker, or vice versa. So if Undertaker was to induct Paul Bearer, Undertaker would obviously have to break character, and as long as he's going to keep wrestling, I don't see him breaking character. Now, I suppose an exception can always be made, but I think the best way to do it would be to wait until Undertaker's completely done and then have him induct Paul Bearer. Now, of course, you could always have Kane do the induction for Paul Bearer this year and have Kane break character and do the speech. I suppose that would be fine. But also, next year's WrestleMania 30, it's in Louisiana, and that's closer to Paul Bearer's home, Alabama, where he grew up and where he became a wrestling fan. So that might be a more fitting spot, but then again, New York is New York. It's WWE's main turf. So if they add him on at the last minute, me personally, I could go either way, and I think there's valid arguments for both him going in this year and then holding it off. So it really just depends on each person and what they think is the best idea. All right, this next one comes from BCruz16. Hey Aaron, with the unfortunate news of Paul Bearer, do you think WWE will have the nerve to let CM Punk use this as, quote, cheap heat? Would not surprise me at all to have them do something like this. We've seen it time and time again over the years, and even as recently as right after Jerry Lawler's heart attack, CM Punk was out there and trying to get heat off of that. I could see them doing it, and you know what? I think that Paul Bearer had a similar mentality to Jerry Lawler and a lot of old-time wrestlers and performers. They have this attitude that if it's good for business, do it. If you're going to die in the ring, it's good for business. That's what Roddy Piper said a promoter told him one time. So that is the kind of attitude a lot of these old-time wrestlers have, that, exploit things. If it means you can generate some heat, then do it. Do whatever you can to boost up business and get the heat. And the thing is, everybody knows about Paul Bearer dying, and it would be weird if WWE didn't mention something. I mean, obviously they'll do like a tribute or whatever, but once they do that, it just seems like a perfect opportunity for CM Punk to try to use that to get heat on The Undertaker. So, I mean, I could very well see them doing that. And, some people are going to be offended. It's just the way it is. But it wouldn't bother me that much if they did it. I don't really have an issue with it one way or the other. But, yeah, I could very well see them doing something. Maybe having CM Punk come out and say, nobody can stop you at WrestleMania, especially Paul Bearer. And then you can have the crowd gasp and groan or whatever. So, I mean, they could do something like that. All right, this one comes from Kayfabe Candy Ass. Many people say WWE exploited Eddie Guerrero's death. What are your opinions? Oh, absolutely. And I think what they did with Eddie Guerrero was far worse than what they might do with Paul Bearer. That was about as far as you could possibly go in terms of exploiting somebody's death. I mean, they had Randy Orton like 2 weeks after Eddie Guerrero died come out and saying that Eddie Guerrero was in hell. I mean, they really went far with that. And then the whole thing with Rey Mysterio winning the Royal Rumble and going on to WrestleMania and dedicating everything to Eddie Guerrero. I mean, it was really overkill. I mean, WWE, they really did exploit Eddie Guerrero, and I don't think they'll do that much with Paul Bearer. If they do anything with Paul Bearer, I mean, I think CM Punk will mention something to get heat, but I don't think they'll ever get as bad as they did with Eddie Guerrero. I mean, that was the far worst that they've ever done, and one could argue that was definitely going too far with what they did with Eddie Guerrero. Where would you rank Paul Bearer with all-time managers? He was my all-time favorite, though I consider Bobby Heenan the best. I wouldn't put Paul Bearer in the top tier managers of all time. I wouldn't put him at a level with Bobby Heenan and Jim Cornette or Captain Lou Albano, Freddie Blassie. Those would be my top tier managers. I don't think Paul Bearer was the best of the best in terms of being a manager, but in terms of being a character and a performer, he was right up there. He played that Paul Bearer role perfectly, and he was just such an interesting character. Everything about him, the voice, the facial expressions. Paul Bearer was just a great character actor. I mean, he was really a tremendous performer, and he did a great job with Paul Bearer, and he definitely was a big part of The Undertaker's act, especially in the early years, no doubt about it. This one comes from Blue Collection. Hi Aaron, huge fan of WWE and love rewatching episodes from past years of Raw and SmackDown. Now that I know they have DVDs with the best of and full matches, but not full episodes, do you think they will ever release all seasons or some? Please answer in video. The only way I see them releasing like full episodes of Raw would be if the WWE Network ever gets off the ground, and that's still a big maybe at this point. They did try releasing a Best of Raw Season 1, which was essentially major matches and storylines from 93 and 94 when Raw first began. But I guess it didn't sell as well as they were hoping. And they canceled plans for a second set. They never ended up releasing a second set. And I think that was just because the sales didn't reach their expectations. And that's unfortunate because I really enjoyed that Best of Raw. But I guess there's just not enough audience for it. And WWE, I guess, has better luck releasing, different kind of DVD sets with best of matches. But in terms of doing like a full season of Raw, I mean, it seems unlikely at this point. I think they would have by now if they were going to. All right, this one comes from Nick Gags. Do you prefer seeing WrestleMania live or on TV? Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I have been at WrestleMania live, but it was at Staples Center, so it's a different kind of atmosphere when you're in a smaller arena compared to being in the big stadium. I've yet to be at a WrestleMania in a major stadium, and I would think that alone would be a really interesting atmosphere and feel. But yeah, I mean, being live is a totally different experience from watching it on television, and when you're up close in person watching a WWE event, I mean, there's nothing like it. The pyro, the crowd, it's very exciting to watch live. But one would think, this is why I don't know, because if you're in a stadium and you're most likely you're not going to be very close. So you're either going to be looking at the Titantron. If you're far enough away to where you have to look at the Titantron to see the action, then you might just be better off watching it on television. But then again, I don't know because I haven't been at a stadium show. But one would think it would be a really unique experience to be there in front of 70,000 people because you just don't get to have that kind of experience where you're there with that many people watching a show. But yeah, WrestleMania 21, being there live, I mean, it really enhances your experience when you're watching with the pyro and the loud music and the crowd. I mean, all of it. It just triggers all your senses, and it's just that, it's something you have to do at some point in your life, I think. Try to go to a major WWE show in a smaller arena, at least. All right, last one today comes from DX. Are you ready? Hi, Aaron. What did you make of the Chris Benoit versus Randy Orton match for the world title at SummerSlam 2004? Do you think the circumstances surrounding Chris Benoit's death overshadows this underrated match, which catapulted Randy Orton to the next level? All right, let's take Chris Benoit completely out of the equation here and just look at the match on its own. Um, I wouldn't say that it was one of the greatest matches in WWE history by any stretch of the imagination. I think that it was, looking back, too soon to push Randy Orton into the main event. I think that, they were trying to create a new star and they were desperate for a new star and they pulled the trigger on Randy Orton, but I think it was too soon. Um, and it was definitely too soon to turn him babyface. They had Evolution turn on him, and it just didn't work. It basically flopped. Orton as a babyface didn't go over well, and a few months later, he was back to being a heel, and he had the feud with The Undertaker, and he was in that upper mid-card level, but I think he needed a few more years to really define his character. And, by the time he got the Viper character going around 2007, that's when I think that he was really reaching his peak. He was still far away from his peak in 2004. So I do think it was too soon, and it was a good match, and the Toronto crowd was a great crowd, but I think that it was too soon for Orton to get that big push at that point. All right, that'll do it for this edition of No DQ&A video. Thanks as always for watching. Subscribe, youtube.com/NoDQCAW. Tell a friend on Facebook or Twitter. And I will see you after lockdown for more No DQ&A video.